Fillies Classic on the Sunday to look forward to as well. Godolphin well represented. Marcos won it last year.
Yeah, won it last year. Big question: which one's Frankie Dettori going to ride? He's got a really difficult pick, hasn't he? Because both Discourse and Lyric of Light looked exceptional 2-year-olds last season, so it's going to be a tricky decision. Hopefully, we'll find out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea how all that plays out. The other week at Kempton, Mikel Barcelona turned up for one. Frankie didn't have a ride in the race. That won for Godolphin. Then a couple of races later, Frankie rode a winner for Godolphin.
I just have no idea, but you wonder if one was absolutely flying at home, would the decision have been made already? Perhaps they're both flying at home, so don't know.
Both unbeaten. Discourse we'll take a look at first of all, with some Newmarket experience as well. 2 out of 2 so far. Has won a pattern race already. This was admittedly as a juvenile in the Sweet Solera. Lily's Angel, a precursor to some classic trial form this term. What have you made of Discourse? Because you always get the impression last season as a juvenile she'd be the type to do well at 3.
She looked an obvious Guineas filly for this season, didn't she? She beat Gamilati, another good Godolphin filly, first time out by a narrow margin on the July course, but then she absolutely hacked up here. She beat Lily's Angel, who admittedly is not absolute top class, but she's a pretty solid benchmark, isn't she? She ran well, she had a good season herself, but Discourse was impressive. Unfortunately, we didn't see her again, which we would have found out a lot more about. I think they had big plans, understandably, for the back end of the season, but if she's in the same form as there, she'll clearly take a bit of beating. She's never run on soft ground before, but even if it's just on the slow side, I would have thought she'd be all right.
Stablemate Lyric of Light, we know is strong at a mile, Mark. She seemed to excel at that distance as a juvenile. Does she have the speed, do you think, for a classic?
Well, I think watching this, I think you make your own mind up. I was taken by the performance. She really quickens to get there, and then she quickens to finish off the race. I think you could fault the form, really. Sammy Tar on the far side, she was a good filly again. She won a sales race, but was she top class? Fedors of Roger Varian's, I think she's always been viewed more of an Oaks filly than an actual Guineas filly, but she's still quickened up nicely. It's obviously it's a difficult decision for Frankie to decide which one does he ride, but both are very good fillies. It's just the uncertainty which is the better of the two. Perhaps they're both very good.
That's assuming he has any choice in the first place, but that's going to play itself out in the coming days. Of course, leading up to Sunday, we've got French interest once again, a French trial interest for Mashura once again. We're going to take a look at that. Been really good to get the Racing World programme over the last couple of months, where we've had plenty of international racing, including these French trials. What did you make of this performance?
Well, she won this with plenty in hand. The form, the seconds rated, was a 60-1 shot. She wins by a net, but she could have won by further than this. The second had been 5th in the listed race, had won at Pau. So probably the fillies in behind were no great shakes, but it was still a striking performance. She handles cutting the ground. Don't think she'll have a problem with the trip. I think she's a half sister to Silk Blossom, who was more of a 6 furlong filly with Barry Hills, but I don't think she'll have a problem with the trip. This is a lot tougher contest for her, but she arrives in good form. We know she's fitting well. She won't mind the ground.
It would seem that the Nell Gwyn sometimes, certainly in recent seasons, can afford an opportunity for someone if they're fit and ready to rock and roll. We'll take a look at this year's renewal as well. Quite a few horses were in there. Lily's Angel was in there. Nayara finishing just ahead of that one, and Sunday Times further back in the piece. And in the end, it was Midland Park and the Hannons who were capitalising on that early season opportunity. Of the ones we're going to take a look at, Mark, any that you thought might just improve for the outing, that might have been perhaps not quite at the best on this occasion?
Well, I think the filly who'll turn out the best of these will be Starscope, the Cheveley Park filly of John Gosden. She'd won a back-end maiden at Newmarket. This was only a second ever run of her life. She got a hood on for the first time. You see her on the far side making good headway. The front two are decent fillies. The winner doesn't even line up. The second, Nayara, she won a Group 1 towards the end of last year in Italy. But just the fact the first and second, I think they've raced 21 times and they've only won 3 races between you, gives you an indication of how good the form could be. And William Buick, who rode Starscope, has chosen to ride the Fuge rather than her as well. So that again tells you there's question marks about the form.
More on the Fuge shortly. Really interesting filly, perhaps maybe over further in due course. But let's touch on some others. And Lightning Pearl, Richard was sort of hoping that Lightning Pearl would get there. We saw Lightning Pearl over here last season as well. It's winning form from Newmarket, and I mean, on a decent surface, she's a good filly.
It's all about the ground, isn't it? Lions expressed doubts this week of hoping it doesn't get too soft, but she's tough. I think she'll get the mile okay. This is 6. She's fairly strong at the finish here. She's won over 7 at Roscommon as well. She's got Group 1 form. I think she's pretty overpriced, really, for what she's achieved. She's a tough, hardy filly. Johnny Murtagh seems keen that she'll get the mile all right, but it's just about the ground. You're hoping it could have dried up back to good ground, but she's tough.
I mentioned the fugue. Let's touch on John Gosden's representative. Now, she's really interesting, perhaps for other days and other races. If she can just put in a decent effort in this classic, you'd be very interested in when she steps up in trip. Is that fair enough? She did manage to win this on debut over 7 furlongs.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough. I think you're possibly underestimating it, really, because like you, at the start of the season, I thought she'd be more of an Oaks filly rather than a Guineas filly, but they could have gone for the Pretty Polly on Sunday. John Gosden was interviewed last week. They've got the option. They could have gone 1.25 miles. They haven't even entered her in that race now, which tells you that they're keen to go for the Guineas. She's got to improve, but that race has got a good history. I think Sariska's won it, Dare Me won it. Admittedly, they're more 1.25 miles fillies, but I definitely wouldn't underestimate it. They could have had Starscope, or William Butte could have had the choice of riding her. He's gone for the Fuge as well, especially if there's a bit of cut in the ground, makes it more of a test. I definitely wouldn't underestimate her.
That last statement, referring to the ground, important to Moonstone Magic and connections, given the fact that they've supplemented her from the trial win to Newmarket. They'll be delighted with the inch or so of rain that they had overnight Tuesday through until Wednesday. The forecast, maybe it might be decent ground, maybe good to soft come the weekend. How important is ground to her, and do you think she's good enough?
Well, from what we've seen, it seems very important. She's only had 2 runs in her life. Both have been soft. She was impressive at Leicester, where I think she won by 8 lengths, and then she was in here into a classic trial off a rating of 85. She does it well. She wins by best part of 4 lengths. She beats Lady Gaga, who I think was rated 91 at the time. Very impressive. Third. It will be a third quick run though, won't it? She didn't start racing until the 13th of April. To have gone from winning at Leicester middle of April to winning the Guineas in about 2 weeks later, I just think that's a huge ask for her.
A few tweets flying around from Newmarket trainers. Niall Hannity saying what a good-looking big filly Moonstone Magic is. She is a mover into 6-1 behind Maybe. And further down you've got Godolphin's runners 7-1, Discourse, Lyric of Light priced up at 8, Mashura is in there at 7s as well, but Moonstone Magic continues to attract support, and there's similar markets, aren't they? Aidan O'Brien's Camelot and Maybe favourites in both the Colts and the Fillies Classics, and then the lightly raced runners like Top Offer and Moonstone Magic, and either of them are being supported.
Yeah, there are. We haven't mentioned Maybe. We should definitely mention her. She's 5 from 5. She was an exceptional 2-year-old. She won the Chesham. She's by Galileo. I'm sure she won't have a problem with the trip. The ground won't be an issue. And the other one I would mention would be Diala. William Haggis certainly doesn't waste classic entries. She was unlucky not to beat Lyric of Light on the debut. She made amends at Newmarket towards the back end. And she will go on the ground. If it is on the slow side, she'll go on it, so I wouldn't underestimate her either. So
the big conundrum in the Classics is the established 2-year-old form or the lightly raced improvers. We'll have answers for you on Saturday and Sunday live on Racing UK.